Hi, everybody. I am Kayla Mercury, and I am with the Louisville Historical Museum, and this is Family History 123, Unit 3. And today we're going to be talking about preservation, so we make sure that all of your hard work withstands the test of time. So let's get started. Like I said, today's unit is on preserving your family history. And we're going to walk through some options that are available to you for physical items, digital items, and talk about considerations for down the road. The first thing I want to talk about today is storage options. For physical items that you may have, such as family heirlooms, photos, family photo albums, or books of any kind, what we recommend is that you make a designated place in your house for these items. That's the first step towards them surviving the test of time, is that people know where they are and know what they are. So make it known to your family and your extended family that it's there and that you'd like it set aside. In addition to storing those items, you want to pay attention to the environment that you're storing them in. In an ideal world, all of our family heirlooms and important keepsakes would be kept in relative humidity, which is about 60% humidity, in a dark, cool place, protected from dust and water. And we'll go into a little bit more detail. For digital items, just basic storage, we would recommend that you keep a copy on one of your personal devices, as well as backup copies, and copies plural, on multiple devices. And that can mean on several of your own computers, or an external hard drive, or if it's small enough, you might be able to fit it on a USB that you can either store in different locations or give to a family member for safekeeping. There is another option as well. You could put it in the cloud or the Google Drive. Both of these are online storage options that are available for digital files. Sometimes you have to pay for them. Google gives you a certain amount free, and then you have to pay for extra. With the cloud, you do have to pay monthly. And if you're not an Apple user, then you might want to go with the Google Drive or another. I know Outlook has its own version. But those are options that are available to you, and putting it on the web is one of the safest options, because then it's not relying on you to keep those devices safe in the case of an emergency or a disaster. Preservation is the act of shoring those items up so that they have the best likelihood of surviving the test of time. So preservation includes extra steps other than just setting the items aside. So to preserve your family history, we've got a few steps here. Like I said earlier, it may seem obvious, but making your family history known within your extended family is really important. We've had family members at the museum come in and say, I don't know anything about this family member, and then we find a donated item from another side of the family that they didn't even know existed. So making your family history known within your extended family is a really important step that is sometimes overlooked. We also want to let you know that donating copies of your family history to a relevant organization is a really great way to make sure that your family history gets out there and becomes a resource to others, family members that you might not know from your far, far extended family, etc. And I want to make a little note there that donating doesn't necessarily mean donating to the historical organization where you live now. It means donating either a copy of your family history or individual items to an organization, whether it's a historical organization or a library or an archive, in a place where it would be relevant. So say your family members lived in Kansas, in a small town, it might be more worth the while to donate it to an organization there. You can do a digital file by emailing it or sending it in a Dropbox. Or if your family member was closer by, maybe you could take it physically. But make sure that you're donating it to an organization where the information would be relevant. If your family is from Louisville and you have an item that is relevant to Louisville, please contact us. We'd be willing to take a look at it. Museums and historical organizations can also help you identify people that you may not know in historic family photos or stories. So reach out to them if you've got missing parts and pieces, or if you have extras, and or if no one wants those items down the line, maybe donating it is the way to go rather than preserving it for your own use. By donating a copy of your family history or any individual items to a historic organization or a library, they do have the potential to end up as a public resource, whether through the museum or through DPLA, which is Digital Public Library of America. If those items end up in any of those repositories, they have the potential for becoming a public resource, which can then lead to education of family members that you didn't even know you had. So it's a really great way to contribute to the historical narrative by donating your items. For physical items, there's some extra considerations that I was talking about when I was talking about storage. So the ideal environment for preserving physical items is specific to what that item is. So for photos, there's a different procedure for preserving them than there are for documents and papers. And artifacts have a completely different set. But there are some basics that we can tell you that are easy to follow and hopefully won't cost you too much. So a typical rule for proper preservation of an item is to put it in an environment that will not erode its integrity. And what I mean by that is certain materials are affected by their environment. So metals can rust, paper can degrade, things like that. So we want to make sure that it's in a controlled environment that's good for it. And a good rule of thumb is to make sure that the items are protected from dust, whether you put it in a plastic sleeve, a dust sleeve, or fold it in between pieces of paper. Now with paper, I want to make sure that you are aware that paper and photos can degrade if they are surrounded by paper that is basically based off of pine, which is very acidic, which is a lot of our paper that we use daily. So we would recommend you use acid-free paper, which you can buy online and also at specialty like hobby stores. But it sometimes can be expensive. So, I mean, at the very least, folding it in between a piece of paper to preserve photos or documents is a great way to go. Making sure that it is safe from water, whether that means sealed off in an acid-free box or container of some kind, up off the floor in case of flooding, and away from sprinkler systems, and away from a lot of excessive light. For preserving objects, there can be a lot that goes into this depending on what kind of object it is, if it's a textile or if it's a metal object. So if you have questions, I would do your own research first and then reach out to an organization that's near you and just see if they can help you figure out how to preserve that item if you feel like it's degrading or is at risk of degrading. For digital items, you have several options and considerations when it comes to preservation. Our first recommendation for going beyond just storing your digital family history would be to put it on the web. Create your own family website or store your files in one of those external storage options that I mentioned earlier. And when I say put it on the web, I mean creating a website. I know Weebly.com is a free website building platform where you can just copy and paste your text in. You can also link to other things if you've got other pages that are relevant to your family or a family business or something that might already be on the web. That's a really good way to like create a landing page for your family history and like gather a lot of things together. You can digitize your family photos and documents. And by digitize, I mean turning a physical photo or document into a digital file. There are several ways to scan a document or a photo. The most high resolution is going to be through a printer or a scanner, which are typically expensive. There are also other ways, using several different kinds of apps that can come on your phone. There's also different software that you can put on your computer that will turn documents into PDFs when you take a photo of them, or will scan photos for you when you take a picture of them. It's kind of the equivalent depending on what software you're using. I've linked a lot of these in the description of this video, so make sure that you click through several of them and figure out what works best for the technology that you have. Some people have scanners at home, some people don't, and they want to use a phone. That's perfectly okay. I've also linked several more resources in the description of this video that talk about how you can preserve your family history on the web. There's options in FamilySearch.org as well as in Ancestry.com that are available to you. So make sure to check those out. Again, with digital items, you can potentially donate them to an organization or a museum or an archive that is relevant to that information. The last consideration with preserving digital items is to keep up with the changing technology. Technology is always advancing, evolving, and we want to make sure that your family history can be viewed and accessed by future generations. So an example I always give is VHS versus DVD, and now DVD is even outdated a little bit. So, I mean, how many people do you know that have a VHS player in their house still? And, you know, if you've recorded family interviews on a VHS tape and you can no longer view them because you don't have a VHS player, what options are available to you? And so if you know of family histories that have been done in the past that are no longer accessible, there are services out there that will transfer those to DVDs or to digital files for you. And so for you, your charge with digital items is to make sure that they keep up with technology and the changing times. And so that's why one of our recommendations was to put it on the web, because unless that web platform goes out of business, which is unlikely, you would not have to update your technology over and over and over again. But if you do have physically recorded items like videos, audio tapes, make sure that you're keeping up with how you can access those items. So just having the VHS or having the audio tape isn't enough. Making sure that you still have the player for that, or that you're transferring those items onto newer technologies, is how you preserve that item. That is part of preserving the digital file. So this is the last unit of our Family History 1, 2, 3 series, and we really hope that this has been helpful for you as a guide and that you have created some really good memories and learned a lot about your family through this process. We hope that you enjoyed the creative aspects of it. If you have excess items like copies of photos or unknown items, so you don't know what something is, and you think it might be related to Louisville history, please feel free to reach out and we would love to help you try to identify the people in that photo or what that object is. And if you have an item that you think is related to somewhere else, don't be afraid to reach out to a historical organization or a library or an archive, wherever you think that item is related to. So yeah, just make sure to take this one step further to preserve all the hard work that you have done. Museums and historical organizations need perspectives, personal perspectives on history. So thank you so much for following along with all 3 units. And on behalf of the Louisville Historical Museum, I really appreciate the work that you are doing for your family's history.